Alright, so here's the deal with this truck. This is my 81 Ford. I've had this for about 20 years. I had it in high school. I had this as my daily driver for a long time. Phase 1 was with the original engine, and it developed some serious blow-by. However, it kind of worked for a while. I was able to get where I was going, got to school and back, etc. Always had to let it warm up in the morning to get to school and everything, but always got there. I don't think I ever had a problem getting to school with it. But it had some blow-by, it was blowing oil everywhere. If you were behind me, driving, I mean, you would notice that for sure. So, I think it was the summer before my senior year of high school, my dad and I pulled the engine out, and we went down to City Motors, and we bought a short block from them, City Motors in Dallas, Texas. I remember it was about $600, give or take, for that short block back then. And we installed that, which was a challenge because, you know, these early 80s trucks, cars from any manufacturer, they had all these little plastic vacuum lines everywhere, and all this emission stuff, and it was kind of a struggle to get all that back together, but we did get it back together, and it ran pretty good. And I ran it like that for another year or two, and then in college I did a summer cleaning pools with this truck, which, let me tell you, that was hot. This truck has never had air conditioner, functioning air conditioning since I've had it, so that was really hot in the Texas heat. But I did it and probably developed some grit out of it, so that's okay. But somewhere in there, I think it was winter break 2007, I did the Offenhauser dual port intake with Holley 390 and FE exhaust manifold modification. That's a classic modification for these Ford 300s, and it's classic because it opens up the intake and the exhaust, and it doesn't break the bank. It's relatively affordable, at least at the time. Costs a little more now in 2024. Anyways, I ran it like that for a long time. I did go through a cylinder head or two, and I don't remember exactly why that was happening. I think the second cylinder head was because it was a rebuilt cylinder head and it had a crack in it, and I just re-cracked it in the same place, basically. And basically ever since then, I had this truck in some sort of state of functionality where I could move it around most of the time, use it for some utility purposes, but really wasn't that reliable, didn't run that good. I do have some video of what it ran like back then, so I'll upload that here as well. But now, many years have passed, and this truck is no longer a daily driver. I've basically just been holding on to it this whole time. I've stored it indoors most of the time, and this past winter, I decided to go ahead and pull the engine out and do the build on it that I always wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was try and get as much power out of one of these Ford 300s as I can without a turbocharger, while maintaining some drivability. So that's a couple of requirements that I was looking for. So I hopped on the forums and I talked with the fellas that are knowledgeable about these motors, and I worked out a build that is what I ended up doing. So I pulled the motor out, had it machined to the specifications I was looking for. I went 60 over on the pistons, and I had it line honed, and I had the crankshaft balanced, and then I had the shop go ahead and zero deck the block. while I was waiting on that, I ordered a cylinder head from ProMAXX. They make a really cool CNC cylinder head that's improved on the original. It's actually a fully aftermarket cylinder head. It's not a modified stock one, which is super cool because it's got hardened steel and the valve seats are hardened, and most importantly, it's got much more open intake and exhaust ports. So I picked up one of those. That took a while to come in. I was also excited that that has threaded rocker studs as opposed to the pressed fit rocker studs of the past. I always had a problem with those pressed fit studs. They would just always pull out on me for some reason. So I did that, and I gathered the other materials like the pistons. So I got DSS pistons, forged steel, the Molnar billet connecting rods. I collected the Harland Sharp rocker arms and a few other components, push rods, etc. And then once the block was done, I started assembling everything and got it all together pretty quick at that point. I did have to learn how to time a cam. I've never done that before, so I had to learn that, watch some videos, read some books. That was kind of a challenge, but I got it done. I also, in the meantime, dropped off the transmission for a full rebuild. It's got the stock C6 3-speed, so I had that fully rebuilt by Parker Transmission and Gear over in Parker, Colorado. That's where I live now, in Colorado. And actually, that's a key point, that I live at elevation. I live at about 6,400 feet of elevation. So when I was mathing out the engine build, I had to make sure that we were compatible at 6,400 feet, specifically around the compression ratio of the engine, because I did push compression about as high as I could without expecting any sort of detonation problems. So we'll talk more about that later, but this truck probably would not run very good at sea level. Let's just say that. Also, during that time, I rebuilt the rear end. I ordered a Ford 9-inch third member from Speedway Motors because the price was fine. The price for that totally built third member was not a whole lot more than what the parts would have cost me, and then that leaves me the flexibility to have my original third member at the house, and I'll probably rebuild that with some different gears so that I can have some options, because I went pretty tall on those gears. I wanted to achieve, like I said, as much power as I could, but also have the drivability and here's the engine idling as it currently is. I'll show you this before we get into the build process. It idles really smooth. There's just, there's some noise under the hood with those solid lifters. That's something I kind of had to get used to, having only run hydraulic lifters in the past. I'm really happy with how the engine bay turned out, with that black paint and everything else being kind of polished aluminum or polished steel. Just a little walk around here. Really happy with how those exhaust tips worked out.
cleaned the interior up quite a bit. New door panels, new carpet. I've had that tachometer for a long time. It's a little water gauge. Okay, so this is what the engine looked like before. This is kind of the state that it would be in when I would randomly try to start it once a year. Really dusty. Could always get it going. I'd usually wipe it down. You hear that? That is a rocker, because those press-fit pedestal mounts would always pull out, and I was just constantly fighting that problem in the past. But you know what? It would always run. Here's the truck parked in the garage as I began pulling the engine and disassembling everything. This was in the middle of winter, of course, so it's cold, and I'm out here working on the truck, which is how it always ends up for me. Here's just, you know, kind of the process and what it looked like in the garage as I was tearing everything apart, making a huge mess. Right there, I discovered that these were previously bored out to 430. I ended up taking it up to 4060 for my build. There's the transmission. Got that cleaned up as best I could before I dropped it off. And then here's the block and crankshaft as it was sitting in the back of the truck, ready to go to the machine shop. These are the parts that I had collected. The connecting rods and pistons, etc. Really, really nice pistons. Here's the engine after I got it back from the machine shop. So it's just really clean. I had them build the short block for me, so mostly because I wanted them to balance everything, and that was the easiest way to do that, was to just go ahead and have them do it. So everything turned out really clean, zero decked. For future reference, for any of you guys that are going to build one of these, you should put the water temperature sensor in right now, because it is hard to do later once you have the headers on. Here's the bottom. That is the stock crankshaft, but those are ARP main studs. And just to show down in here, you can see the pistons and the Molnar hardware. It's just really, really clean. It all looked really good. I got out my straight edge just to show how gosh darn perfect this machine work was. Okay, so now we're back in the garage, and it's time to start building this thing up. That's the Felpro head gasket. I've used a lot of head gaskets on these engines, and that one's my favorite, I think. It looks pretty, but it also seals really well. Never had a problem with it. ARP cylinder head studs. Highly recommend those. Use the assembly lube. This is the ProMAXX cylinder head that I got from ProMAXX. It has the whole thing is CNC'd and very high quality hardened steel. It's tapped for threaded rocker pedestals, which is super cool. These next images just show the parts that I had. QuikFuel 650. You know, you got to get pictures of this stuff while it's brand new and clean. I went with the real gaskets, valve cover gasket. I'm not sure that I like that. It actually kind of leaks a little bit. It's high quality, reusable, but it does kind of leak. I may end up swapping that out. Schneider cam, 142. Degree wheel. Took me a while to get that cam degreed. Ended up having to use the Mr. Gasket offset key, and that did work. Right here you can see I had to machine down the oil pump a little bit to get it to fit over that ARP stud. I don't know if others have that problem, but I did have that problem. This is just showing the contact area for the roller rockers. Smack dab in the middle, just like you want. Valve lash set, 0.014 inches. Those Harland Sharp rockers look so awesome. Too bad you don't get to see them because they're hidden in there. That's just my garage during the process, you know. Life carries on, still have to keep on working on other projects, and I was kind of building this as I was doing other things, so just spending a little bit of time. This shows the paint, how it ended up. I think that engine paint looked really good. Duraspark 2 distributor. I cleaned up the engine bay quite a bit before putting everything back in and painted everything as best I could. Time to mate the engine to the transmission right here. There's a little message left by Bill at Parker Transmission and Gear. And here we go. Let's install this thing. Pretty easy to get this in there when you have the whole front clip off like that. At this point, I started messing around with the other stuff. I can't remember. I was waiting on something to come in the mail, so I think I was waiting on the radiator. So I ended up pulling the rear end off and doing the springs and rebuilding that. Well, I didn't rebuild the third member. I bought one from Speedway Motors, and that turned out really good, actually. Cost-wise, for what you get, it was really high quality. So this was a project one day. Got it all clean and painted as well. I hope that paint lasts. I don't know. New springs. Painted the frame back there while I was at it. And then here we go. The radiator came in, got it all installed. This is the first start, give or take. Also, this was night, and it was very loud with those open headers, so once I verified that I could probably run it and break it in, I went ahead and killed it until the next day, and I wheeled it outside. Tried to start it, and the battery. Yep, battery's dead. And off I go. Let's go buy a battery. I got a battery. I guess I forgot to run the camera for that start, but this is the actual break-in. 2,000 RPM. Built that little switch plate just to keep things clean while I was messing with it. I've got the Joe Gibbs driven break-in oil go in for this part of the process, and it was really loud. I mean, those are just open headers, so it was loud. I did communicate with the neighbors prior to doing this, and I promised them I would get exhaust installed. I kept spraying water underneath the truck to keep it moist because of those headers. I was just a little afraid of sparks flying out. You see, have good oil pressure. Always good to see that. So this is how I had it hooked up. I wasn't using the gas tank yet. I just had a gas can over here with one of those Edelbrock electric pumps. It worked out fine though, and it gave me really safe control of it right there with the switch. Okay, so the second that I started driving it, I broke the yoke and ended up needing to order some parts. And so this is the setup. It's Spicer 1310 off of the third member yoke to 1330, which is what the drive shaft is set up for, with new billet connecting straps in there. And at the transmission slip yoke, that is a Moser Engineering 1350. So I'm kind of stepping it up from 1310 to 1350. That's not perfectly ideal, but it is what I have, and it is much stronger than the stock setup. Got the truck back together after that. Got the hood put back on, front end put back on. A couple shots of the actual engine itself. Looks pretty good. I like that black paint. That Eastwood engine enamel is pretty good stuff. Emptied it all out, cleaned the floor pan, put down Dynamat. That's brand new coverlay carpet on top, new door trim panels with the stock XLT chrome trim off of the old panels. This truck was a wood grain XLT truck originally, and that stuff just doesn't really age very well. It gets kind of scratched up and flakes off, so I just went black with this build. Just a little bit cleaner. That seat is out of a early 90s Ford. That was in there whenever I got the truck though, so I've just had that seat this whole time. So drivability of this rig is actually pretty good. I didn't know how it was going to turn out with the C6 plus the gears I put in the rear end plus the camshaft that I chose, but actually it's pretty good. I mean, when you're on the highway, you're pretty much in third gear and you're playing around in third gear, but it has a lot of response. You know, if you're cruising at 70 miles an hour, 3,000 RPM, right now my transmission kickdown cable's not even working. I need to fix that. I think it was just a new kit. I think the cable's stretched. But even so, there's so much power between 3,000 to say like 5,000 RPM, and I hardly ever go up that high, even though the engine wants to. I know, 300 straight six that wants to go to 5,000 RPM, I know, but it really does. It can handle it, and anyways, there's plenty of power in there for passing, etc. It's just drivability is really, really good for this truck. I love the short wheelbase. I did put all new suspension components on, so shocks and springs are brand new all the way around. Bilstein 5100s, and it drives really good. It feels good. Inside, creature comforts that I did was I put new carpet in, Dynamat all around. Put a new stereo in there with some good speakers, Dynamat at the doors, so it's all pretty quiet in there, relatively speaking. So that's pretty cool. And so that plus the suspension and the steering, short wheelbase, it's really just a lot of fun to drive. My other truck is a Super Duty, and it's less fun to drive around the city. So this has pretty much been my daily driver, and it's been a lot of fun cruising this around again, like I used to when I was a little bit younger. So let's see, let's talk about safety a little bit. Like I said, put on new suspension all the way around. I also rebuilt the brakes all the way around. Everything's brand new on the brakes. Brake booster, master cylinder, brake lines on at all four wheels, discs and rotors and calipers on the front, and then everything's brand new on the back. I kept it drum just because those parts are so easy to get, and I didn't really want to mess with the disc brake conversion yet. I might do that one day. I don't know. These work just fine. The brakes and stopping power is pretty good. I did have to put a little vacuum canister on for the brake booster, just because vacuum is not great at low RPM with the cam profile, but with the vacuum canister, it works pretty good. What else? I put a new seatbelt kit in there from seatbeltsplus.com. They were great to work with, by the way. They originally sent the wrong package, or I ordered the wrong thing. I'm not even sure, but they made it right. Called them up. A guy named Alan answered, fixed it, mailed me the correct ones. I mailed the old ones back. It was totally fine. So you always like to see that when you work with an online retailer you've never worked with before. You know, I think customer service like that goes a long way. And Seatbelts Plus came through on that. So yeah, other than that, this truck, you know, it's rough. It's got the body is rough. As you can tell, the front fender doesn't match, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. This is a truck that I want to be able to drive around. It's not supposed to be a show truck. This is a truck that I wanted drivability, but also wanted it to be fun. But it's also a truck that I've had for 20 years, and before I got it, it was in the world for, you know, 23 years before that. So it's been around, and it's in pretty good shape. The frame's in good shape. There's really no rust on this truck anywhere, other than maybe a little bit of surface rust here and there on the frame, but it's pretty good. So, you know, I'm not going to dump a whole lot of money into body and paint on this truck. It's going to be just like this for a long time. You know, famous last words. So I'll probably tune in next year and show you a paint job on it, but let's see. I think that's about it. That's the truck. It's good. I like it. It's fun. The engine build was a lot of fun with, you know, collecting those parts and putting it together, breaking the engine in, etc. That was fun. The engine break-in process, what happened was I set it all up and realized that I had messed up, and I couldn't turn the engine over by hand with the I couldn't turn it over because I didn't have the torque converter all the way in. So I learned about that. By the way, it's a Hughes 2500 RPM stall torque converter, and when I put that in, there's kind of like a couple of clicks you need. I only got to the one click, and so when I got the engine in, I realized I couldn't turn it over and had to pull the engine back out a little bit, fix the torque converter, and everything was just fine after that. It fired right up. I was real nervous about it, but there was a certain moment when it was like, okay, everything is lined up. It is time to go ahead and turn this thing over. And it fired up. It took me a few little tries to get it idling smoothly with timing. I did get it, and then I killed the battery somewhere in there and had to go buy a battery. And that was okay. It was late. It was dark when I was getting it running, and I had no exhaust hooked up. It was loud. I mean, open headers straight to the ground. I was paranoid about that too. I had spraying water under the truck to make sure that the sparks didn't ignite anything in case I had fuel problems. I mean, I really dilly-dallied as much as I could before actually running it, and then finally it was time to just go ahead and send the text message out to the neighbors saying, hey, I'm about to break in a motor with open headers, and we're going to be running 2,000 RPM for 20 minutes. They said, hey, go for it. So that's what I did. Broke in really well. I used Joe Gibbs driven break-in oil, and then I'm running the Joe Gibbs driven the hot rod conventional oil. I'll run that after the break-in oil. This is the second round of break-in oil, just for fun. Why not? Let's see, what else? Once I had it broken in, I put it on the trailer and I took it up to Full Blown Customs up in Denver. James up there did a great job on this build for the exhaust. He hooked me up with stainless exhaust all the way out the back from the headers to the back. We put a Flowmaster 40 series resonator on there with a MagnaFlow carb compliant cat. Why did I do that? Well, I do want to get this registered in the state of Colorado, and that will require me to pass an emissions test. So I did put a carb compliant catalytic converter on there. I got a good one, but still it's there. So they did a great job though, really clean. That's the one thing that I don't really do myself. I don't do a lot of metal work, so it was nice to go find somebody to partner with on that and be able to trust them. You know, for me it's kind of a weird process it's a weird thing for me to be able to, you know, for me it's weird to drop the truck off after doing all this work and then leave it at somebody's shop for a couple of days. That, you know, I don't really do that very often, so I do appreciate Full Blown Customs up there, kind of understanding that and doing such a great job. Went up there and picked it up. Once I picked it up, I was able to dial it all in because it had some neighborhood-friendly exhaust, you know, mostly. So got the carb dialed in and the timing dialed in. Pretty good. Right now, you know, I was talking about drivability. Right now, it's there's no bog really to speak of anywhere in the RPM band. I think that I can dial it a little better. I do have some jets and some power valves at home to try. I think that I will notice some positive performance improvement from that, but it's good. Fuel economy, hard to say where my fuel economy is at because the speedometer doesn't work yet. I will fix the speedometer, but that means I don't know how many miles I'm going per tank, so I'm not sure yet about that. I also don't know how fast I'm going, so I've been using a GPS app on my phone. Works pretty good. So you might be asking, why did I spend all this time and money rebuilding a Ford straight six? I could have bought I could have put a 351 Windsor in here. I could have done a lot of things. I definitely could have bought something like a 5.0, like a Coyote 5.0, and done like a resto mod like that, cheaper than what this build took. Why did I do it this way? Why did I build a Ford 300? I built a Ford 300 because these things are legendary, and I'm one of the people that subscribes to that because I've had one for a long time. I've driven a Ford 300 a lot, and they really are indestructible. Like I said, I went through a couple of cylinder heads. Well, you know, that probably could have been avoided. I was younger, still learning about things. One of those cylinder heads was cracked and repaired, and then it broke again, so maybe it was a bad repair job. I probably should have never used that cylinder head. I mean, really, like, my bad experiences with the Ford 300 have nothing to do with the motor. There's a cult following for these things, and there's a reason why. It's just a cool motor. It's fun to work on, but for me, it is nostalgia. I had this truck in high school, working on this engine with my dad. People gave me a lot of crap for having a 300. You know, the V8 boys thought that I should pull that out and put a 302 in, etc. Well,
you know, I never wanted to do that. I like this motor. It's fun. It looks cool, and it's a lot of fun to have built one, build one that runs like this. There's very few manufacturers that make performance parts for these, but there are some, and those are the parts that I accumulated and built this engine with. It's not the most powerful thing there ever was. I could have so much more power out of a V8 if I were to build that up with the same budget that I built this motor. But this motor like this is probably going to run. I mean, I'll never pull this out if I can help it. So, you know, for the next 10 or 20 years, this is probably the motor, unless I mess something up. This is it. So that's the configuration for this truck. You know, for a different truck, I mean, yeah, I'm thinking about a different project. That project, probably going to go V8. It's something that I haven't really spent as much time working on, like an FE motor. I'm looking for probably like an FE. I think that'd be fun. So, you know, this gets that out of my system on the straight 6. The next motor is going to be a little bit different.